This is $12, and this is $1 million cash. I'm gonna show you exactly how to achieve this what seems to be impossible task with the exact blueprints of steps needed for anyone to retire a millionaire. But wait, we already have an issue. I quickly realized that many people don't necessarily have high-paying jobs, or are already pretty old and can't spend tons of time trying to grow their money. So I had to do some digging. I had to scavenge the internet to try to find the different techniques and financial plans to help solve the age-old question on how to retire
a millionaire.
But to do it somewhat fast, seeing just how far we can stretch the limits and find out just how much we needed to become a person with $1 million. After searching for what seemed to be hours on the internet for ways to become a millionaire with little amounts of cash, I stumbled upon a community called the FIRE movement.
This is a new financial movement being embraced by millennials and really any adult who wants to retire early. It's called FIRE.
The FIRE movement.
The so-called FIRE movement.
FIRE movement. FIRE.
FIRE movement.
FIRE movement. FIRE.
Some call it FIRE.
It stands for Financially Independent Retirement Early. You can find them on certain websites, Reddit, forums, and there's even books about it. The moment I found this, I was instantly intrigued. I quickly figured out it's a community of people who dive into the analytics of exactly what you would need to retire at any age you want to. After reading countless amounts of threads and posts, it got me thinking. Retirement isn't an age. It's a financial number, and there's no law that says you have to work until you're 65. I realized that it's all about knowing what you need, knowing the exact amount of money you need each and every week to continue living your lifestyle without working another day in your life. So what is this simple financial equation? How do I calculate exactly how much money I need each and every week to retire a millionaire? Well, first we have to go over a key factor in all of this, the 3 subgroups. As we all know, not everyone is in the same position. One of you might be working at Wendy's. One of you might have a high-paying job, but you're 50. You could be a huge spender, a saver, college student, a 16-year-old in high school. You get my point. There's countless amounts of different combinations on what your current financial situation currently is. And some of you spend money way faster than others. So we need to pinpoint which subgroup you're in so we can then calculate the exact plan you need to execute this strategy. The first subgroup is what's called lean FIRE. This first group is willing to live in a minimalist lifestyle to cut expenses as much as possible. These are the types of people that order off the value menu at McDonald's, or they cut off the heat in the winter, or they're buying single-ply toilet paper, or they make YouTube videos for a living. Wait, what? You get the gist. They take a lot more sacrifices in their early lifestyle and live off the bare essentials. But the advantage of this is you can retire a lot earlier. In general, lean investors try to aim to survive on only $25,000 annually. The second subgroup is what's called FIRE. Yeah. That's it. This is what most people would consider normal financial independence. Living your normal, regular lives without needing to work again. Sure, you're not going to be driving Ferraris or going to Fiji anytime soon. But still, you're not gonna have to worry about money within reason, and you're not gonna have to work if you don't want to. The third and final subgroup is what's called Fat FIRE. This is for the big spenders, the people who don't want to have to worry about,
hey, can I afford that?
These are the types of people who have one of those robot dogs as a pet. This subgroup is spending around $200,000 a year. So now that we've gone over all the subgroups, hopefully you have identified which kind of retirement you would like and the type of lifestyle you would want. Now, it's very important. You should also be honest with yourself on what your spending habits are and how much you usually spend a year. Now that we know all the subgroups, what's this magical blueprint to figure out how much we need to save? Well, we should first go over the basics of what FIRE actually is and the strategy behind it. The whole idea behind FIRE is that you work a job, grow and save the income to a big sum of money called a nest egg, which is the goal for the amount of money you want for the end game. Once you have that amount of money, you can retire early and do what's called the 4% rule. The 4% rule is something that came from a research paper called the Trinity study. In this study, they found if you only took 4% from your total investment portfolio, it was very unlikely that you would exhaust that full nest egg for 30 years. So basically, you have your investment portfolio, you take 4% out every year for your expenses, the investments sustain the withdrawal requirements, so you can constantly repeat this process and not have to work another day in your life. Sounds pretty nice, right? In other words, if you can live off 4% of your total investment portfolio, hypothetically hypothetically, your investment should be able to take care of you for 30 years. Now, if you want to stay on the safe side to counteract the high inflation rates, bad markets, world problems in general, it's best advised for you to try to only spend 3% of your total investment portfolio. The reason being, it's a lot safer and more reliable and has a way higher success rate. So for these examples, we'll be using that 3% number. So what that means is if you have $100,000 invested, you can only spend $3,000 a year without running out of money for 30 years. If you have $1 million invested, you can only spend $30,000 every year. You get the point. So the more money you have invested, the more money you can spend, obviously. Now we can move on to the next step, which involves how much money you spend versus how much money you need in your nest egg. First, you're going to want to calculate all your expenses, your rent, your car payment, food, bills, everything. So calculate however much you're spending each and every year on average. Now, as a quick hint, the lower this number is, the better, as it'll make it a lot easier to obtain the end goal. So let's say after calculating all your expenses, you spend an average of $30,000 a year. All you do is take $30,000 divided by 3%, which would give you $1 million, which means in order to retire, you need $1 million and you can spend $30,000 every year for 30 years and not have to work one of those years. This also means though, you can't change the amount you spend. So it's not like the 7th year you can decide to buy a yacht. You have to stay at that $30,000 limit every year. Say if you want to up the budget and spend $200,000 every year. Well, you would need $6.67 million in order to retire without working for 30 years. So the amount you need to retire is completely based off your spending habits and how much you spend per year. But it's a great way to think about retirement and planning for that. This is why all these FIRE enthusiasts are so cheap and don't like spending their money, because they know just how much of an impact money invested has on you in your later years. Now, maybe you don't care about retiring early per se. Maybe you just want to know from your age how much you need to invest every single week in order to become
A millionaire.
Well, again, I did some digging. In order to do this successfully, you have to have a plan. This is the plan that I use in my own personal life that works pretty well for me. You guys can implement it in your life as well and see if it works for you. Here's the plan. The first thing you need to do is automate your savings. I have my bank account set up to where every time money gets deposited into my bank account, a certain percentage is automatically transferred to my investment account. This instantly removes any obstacles that would come forth when normally trying to save money. Like, for example, how often have you said,
I'm gonna save $50 from this next paycheck and invest it?
Then the next paycheck comes around and 1, you either completely forgot about you saving it, or 2, you say, fuck it, I don't need to save my money, and instead buy a high-grade stainless steel watermelon cutter on Amazon. This does look pretty cool though. This happens all the time, and what I found is by automating this process, it makes this task a lot smoother. Since this is all happening in the background, you almost kind of forget about that $50, since it never really showed up in your bank account in the first place. But in the background, it's being invested, and your wealth is slowly being built from investments. The next step in this plan is determining how much money you actually need to save in order to become a millionaire. Now, for these results, I assumed you would be investing in a low-cost index fund, like VOO, which on average gives an annual return of 12%. This is taking into consideration inflation rates and everything like that. Then in these test results, I'm also assuming you're going to retire at age 70, as that's the new retirement age according to Suze, whoever that is. Now, while researching this information, I quickly found out the younger you are, the less amount of money you need to save per week. If you're a little older, it's still not a problem. Obviously, the older you are, the more catching up you have to do, but it's really not that bad. Here's the numbers I found. This is on a per week basis. So as you can see, if you're 20 years old, you only have to invest $8 every week into an index fund for 50 years and you will be a millionaire by 70. Only $8 every week. If you're 55, you have to invest $530 every week for 15 years to become a millionaire. This is also assuming you're starting from a $0 balance in your bank account. Now, like I said, all of this is based off the returns of an index fund. Sure, there are other investments out there that perform a lot better or yield higher returns, but the reason I picked an index fund for this everyday Joe strategy is because you literally don't need any financial education to make money from an index fund. You also don't need to spend countless hours researching individual stocks if you're not into that sort of thing. On top of that, index funds are usually very consistent over long periods of time. They're also highly diversified and not as volatile as a normal stock would be. Let's take a look at what these earnings would actually look like. Now, as you can see with these graphs, the the earnings are exponential because of compounding. Your money is just constantly reinvesting into itself. So as you can see, sure, the gains are little at the beginning for the first 10 years, but as more and more time goes on, the gains get bigger and bigger. A little goes a lot in these financial scenarios. After doing all this research, I found that there's no magic pill you can take. There's no way to make this all happen instantly. It all really comes down to how much money you're saving, how much money you're making, and how much money you want to spend when you retire. So if you want to retire comfortably, just stay consistent with your investments, try not to spend as much, and you'll do just fine. It can be really hard to do this though with years like 2022, for example, where there was just a huge pandemic, there's war happening in Ukraine, inflation rates are as high as they've ever been, and we're in a massively overvalued stock market. That's why I took the time to research on what Warren Buffett does during these high inflation times and see how he's personally investing in 2022. If you're interested in that, go check this video out because it's extremely interesting and it may just help you make money in the year of 2022. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.